Hello, lovelies. Yes, after a week's hiatus, I'm back. Hello, it's Lesley. Not quite enough changes of clothes. More will become apparent later. How are we? I hope everyone's okay. Apologies, I haven't caught up with any, or not all of the comments yet. I will do that once this vlog is loading. But I hope everyone's well. I hope everyone's okay. It's been a couple of weeks. And it's been a busy couple of weeks. I'm going to tell you all about it. And there will be a lot of discussion of bodily fluids, most of which will be mine. And before you get alarmed, I'm talking sweat. Now, I know that horses sweat, gentlemen perspire and ladies glow. Well, saddle me up and call me Trigger, because it's been hot here. And I've been doing physical stuff, which I don't normally do. So let me tell you all about my week. As you're aware, I was taking a week off my regular work to go and look after our family patient who has come home from hospital. And I've been speaking about them in kind of anonymised terms, but I might as well tell you now, it's my dad. Just before Christmas, he fell at home. After a day, he was starting to feel very unwell. Got him into hospital. After some time there, it turned out he'd broken a vertebrae, the C2, so the second one down. And also put a kink into his spinal cord. And within a few days, this had left him pretty much paralysed from the neck down. So Christmas was interesting. And those of you who were watching Vlogmas last year, remember I had to kind of cut it short quickly, and that's because this had happened and we were kind of rushing around. He then, in January, went to a hospital in London where he had surgery, so they fused vertebrae and put scaffolding in the back of his neck and all that sort of thing. Then he was back to his local hospitals for the beginning of rehab. And then in March, he went to Stoke Mandeville Hospital, which is the UK National Centre for Spinal Injury Patients. So we are extremely, extremely grateful that he was there, because it is the best place for all the rehab he needed. He was starting at his local hospital to get a bit of dexterity back and a bit of mobility, but Stoke Mandeville is the place to go. They've got all the equipment, they've got the expertise, they're geared up for spinal injury patients. But, you know, he's a man of a certain age. We were worried that he wasn't going to be accepted because of his age, but thankfully he was. He has worked so hard since he's been there, always keen to do more, often complaining about not having enough physio sessions. We've discovered quite a bit about Dad's character this year. He's very, very stubborn, which is apparently a family trait. Luckily, it passed me by, obviously. But that stubbornness has done him a lot of good. So it reached the point where Stoke Mandeville felt they had done as much rehab as they could reasonably do. There is a kind of curve of improvements, and although there will still be some physiotherapy and there will still be things happening at home to continue to improve mobility and dexterity, they felt they'd reached the lion's share of what they could do. So he came home last week, and I was there for a week to help him adjust to being at home, because the reality is, although he's vastly improved from what he was like at the beginning of the year, he still doesn't have much mobility. He can do a few steps using a frame. Like I say, he's done incredibly well considering where he was. Beginning of the year, he couldn't scratch his nose, he couldn't give himself a drink, couldn't do a thing, needed help with everything. And now he is looking towards living independently with carers coming in to do bits and pieces for him. So that's kind of where we're at. So he came home on Wednesday, and he was determined to walk into his house because he'd walked out of it. So the ambulance guys who'd brought him home in the patient transport, they wheeled him up to his front door. He stepped over it, and then we got him into a chair to wheel him the rest of the way. But he did what he wanted to do. And the rest of the time, my week there was kind of being his carer, effectively. Because of a bit of a mess up, he didn't have any carers coming in for the first 24 hours. So that was me in charge then. Oh, dear me. We got along fine. Mentally, still has full capacity. And also, when I'm talking about this stuff, I am aware that I am only doing what many of you will have done for parents or other relatives, some who will have lost some of their physical abilities, some who will have lost some of their cognitive abilities. I'm just relating my time. So, although I'm quite pleased with what we achieved over the time, I am aware that others have achieved far more with far less help. So, you know, this is just sharing my experiences with you. So Dad's cognitive abilities are all intact, and he's one of life's problem solvers. He likes to kind of work out solutions. So I blatantly use that. So if we're in a situation where we weren't quite sure what to do, I say, right, what do you want us to do? How do we want us to solve this? So he came home Wednesday, got home sort of middle of the afternoon, did some food. I had to help kind of wash him, get him to bed, that sort of thing. Thursday, more of the same. Then we had a carer come round to kind of introduce herself, let her know what was happening. This is an acute response team who have been brilliant. Everyone we've met has been amazing. All the medical staff, all the care staff. It's not just that they've been good at their job, they've also been friendly and good-humoured. And when you think of the pressure that these folks are on sometimes, you've got to absolutely take your hat off to them. My respect for nursing and medical and care professionals has always been fairly high. I come from a family of nurses, so I do understand, you know, the work they do and the pressures they're under. But I've had a very small taste of that this week, so my respect is even higher. Wasn't a time completely without incident. Thursday evening, there was a managed fall. We ended up that the only way I could safely get him out of that situation was to lower him to the ground. And we then looked at each other, and I kind of made sure he was safe and as comfortable as he could be and warm enough. And I said, what do we do now? And we looked at each other, and I said, ring Big Sis? He said, yeah, I think so. So called my sister to come and help. And between us, we got him back to bed. She's a nurse, so she's done all the manual handling courses. Now, by this point, back to the bodily fluids, I was dripping. If he'd wanted a shower, I could have just stood over him. Sorry, this is probably too much information. I always say there's no such thing as bad weather, only inappropriate clothing. And normally when I say that, it's not having a waterproof coat or not having enough layers in cold weather, that sort of thing. But I'd kind of gone the other way because I am foolish, and I'd packed excuse me, jeans and shirts because I thought we're indoors, so it's going to be fairly calm temperature. And jeans and shirts, did I say shorts earlier? I meant shirts, are easy. And I can move around in them, and, you know, yeah, we've had a heat wave. Not only have we had a heat wave, but Dad has also been less mobile than he's used to, and he's just come out of hospital, which hospitals tend to be kept at a warmer temperature. So he was feeling the cold. So he's saying to me things like, you know, can you help me on with the cardigan? Can you do it up for me? And I'm... So when you add adrenaline to that mix, like when we'd ended up on the floor, he'd ended up on the floor, yeah, I was so dehydrated when I went to bed that night. I was getting cramp in the night. And the next day I messaged himself and said, how you doing? And I explained what had happened and said, you know, I'd had this cramp. He said, perhaps you should try and drink a bit more. I don't know what it is about me that makes him think I wouldn't come to that conclusion myself. And I appreciate he was trying to be helpful. But it just seemed a ridiculous comment. Anyway, I digress. So there was a second, my dad called it a graceful descent, which made his doctor laugh when his doctor rang to see how things were going, because he said he's never had a fall called graceful before, but you know, we're fine. We don't, there was no falling, there was no kind of dropping to the ground, there was no banging of heads or anything like that. It was all managed. It was just like, once you're there, you think, okay, what do we do now? Problems were solved, that was fine. Then we got to Monday. Prior to that, on his discharge papers from the hospital, they'd asked his doctor to arrange a blood test because they were a little worried about some of his levels. The doctor arranged the blood test and he rang on Monday morning, having had the results. The blood sample was taken on Friday. He rang on Monday morning. How are you feeling? And my dad said, fine. He said, are you sure? Because I'm looking at your blood results and a lot of the markers are kind of gone in the way that you wouldn't want to see. It seemed as if his health condition was deteriorating. So the doctor then said, you need to have more blood taken and we need to do more tests. And because he wanted it done more urgently, it meant going through the hospital system rather than blood sample taken going through the path labs. So that meant going through A&E, accident emergency. And I was listening on the phone, we had it on loudspeaker. Can you get to the hospital? Well, at this point, I hadn't practiced any car transfers with Dad, getting from chair to car and so forth. And I was also a little worried that driving to the hospital, if Dad was as ill as the doctor feared, and he was taken ill as I was driving him there, I couldn't drive and look after him. So I said, look, I really don't feel safe doing this. So the doctor said, well, we'll arrange hospital transport, which they did. And the ambulance, it was patient transport. It's not an emergency ambulance, it was patient transport. And they came relatively quickly. So I'm rushing around getting him a bag together in case he needs to be kept in overnight, so that he's got change of clothes, wash kit, that kind of thing. And then I followed him in my car to the hospital. So there he was, back in A&E again. It was fine. They took bloods, they did the obs. We then had a chat with a doctor, and thankfully by this point all the markers were going back in the right direction again. The doctor did suggest a slight alteration to one of his medications, which may have affected one of these markers. But Dad was discharged that same day, so we got him home. But it was one of those days where physically you don't do much, but it is exhausting because you're kind of on alert all day. You're just waiting for your name to be called, and at one point they came in and they called sort of 4 different patients to take us through to a different unit for assessment, and it felt like being called for jury service. Here, present, yeah. So anyway, we got him home, he felt fine. He was a bit sort of, well, that was a waste of a day, but we would much rather the doctor had been overzealous than under. So although, as it turned out, he was fine, better to find that out than have him be unwell and be rushed in on an emergency ambulance. So after that, things did calm down a bit, but I was still super hot. Ordered some more clothes, ordered some t-shirts to be delivered to my dad's house because I couldn't get the washing done quickly enough. I was like 3 or 4 shirts a day because I was just getting so hot. And I would sort of, you know, help Dad into bed, get him all tucked in for the night. And then he'd be saying, oh, it's a bit cooler today. And again, I am dripping. I'm not the right person to ask about this, Dad. My internal temperature is currently going like this. So, yes. Drinking lots. Not alcohol, just drinking lots. Everyone said take lots of knitting with you, which I did. And I managed to make this, a mitten. And I did do the cuff of a second one. Yeah, there just wasn't time. Caring for people takes time. I was doing the meal prep and that sort of thing. Again, happy to do it. You know, it wasn't a problem. but it just meant there wasn't the knitting time. And where I might have thought that perhaps I'd sit in for an evening for an hour and do some knitting, no, I went to bed too. My dad has always been an early riser, so I knew I'd have to be, so I wasn't going to be late to bed if I was going to be up sort of 6 o'clock that sort of time. So I'd taken him in hospital. He'd said about his hands feeling cold, so I'd taken him in just some kind of acrylic fleece gloves that I had in a cupboard, and he found that they helped. But because his dexterity isn't always great, and he's got other medical conditions as well, so it's not all because of the fall, he was finding the gloves a bit slower to put on and take off. And if he wanted to take his gloves off quickly because he wanted to grab a tissue and blow his nose or something like that, he felt that mittens would be easier. So I finished one, tried it on him, we know it fits. I've now done the second, so he has a pair. So because it's going to be a few days before I see him, I'm going to get these in the post so that he has them to use, so they can wash the other gloves if nothing else. He's been wearing them a lot. Keep saying, do you want me to wash those, Dad? No, we're fine. Okay. So I'll get these in the post to him. I will talk about them for the month-end podcast, but they were a drops pattern called the Grey Parade Mittens. And so I made them in grey. Also, I knew that he would want a fairly plain colour, and this was an acrylic yarn that I had in the stash. It's a little bit old school acrylic, it's a little bit squeaky, but it does mean he can just sling these in the washing machine and they will be fine. So these are done. One appears to be slightly shorter than the other. Well, no one has completely symmetrical hands, do they? They stretch, you'll be fine. So that was my week, and I've spent nearly 20 minutes talking to you about it. Since then, I mean, obviously in that time you also have a lot of calls from different organisations and authorities that can help, and ordering equipment to help him move around the house and that sort of thing. He has been very slowly, because he's been he hadn't been home for kind of nearly 9 months. So he is very slowly getting back in touch with family and friends, because he just wants to kind of ease himself in. So a few people he's still sort of getting in touch with as he feels ready. The other thing is with spinal injury patients, and this is something that we were told by his consultant at the hospital, is they sleep more than they used to because your body is working differently, and you just get more tired. So he is practicing quite a lot. But he has done incredibly well. Like I say, it's mostly through being stubborn. So he's stubborn, he's impatient, he won't always listen to what he's told. And I even heard him talk in his sleep one night. So I have, and I've said this to Dad as well, I have said to himself, I now have a greater understanding of what it's like to live with me, and I'm sorry. I told my dad this and he found that amusing, thankfully. So I'm back at work on Monday. I'm going to be spending more time at Dad's than I had before his accident, obviously. So there will be a few times when I am spending time there. As time moves on, as the carer routine gets established, and as Dad gets used to being at home and doing more, then the amount that those of us who are staying will need to do will probably decrease a little. So I will be taking my laptop and working and stuff. I took my laptop this time, and I did join in on Saturday evening with me, daytime for a lot of you guys. Barbara, Flame and Fibre Zoom call, which was lovely. Dad had gone off to bed, so I joined the Zoom, so that was good. But yeah, not a lot of knitting got done. But it was nice, and I'd been a little bit apprehensive beforehand because I can't remember the last time I'd spent that long a period with my dad. Probably when I left home at 18. Politically, we're very different, so we can fall out easily. Not in a real I'm never talking to you again way, but we can sort of disagree on things. But we tended to steer clear of those subjects, and we were just dealing with the day-to-day, so that makes sense. I mean, it's been an honour and a privilege to do, but I wasn't sorry to be coming home. I was physically very tired, mentally quite tired, and I just wanted to come home and cuddle my dog, you know. And that night, I normally wake up every couple of hours. You know, sometimes I might need the bathroom, sometimes I might need a drink. I did 8 hours straight sleep without moving. So, yeah, it was good that I came home when I did, to give me the ability to recharge, to go back and help when I'm needed. So other sisters are involved at the moment. We're sort of taking it in turns. Dad does want to live on his own. He had lived on his own, has done since my mother died, so he wanted to be on his own, and that's what we're working towards, with care and emergency buttons and those sorts of things being set up. So that's where we're at. Yeah, it's been a very different week. I was going to take some footage of me driving out and about, but I didn't go out and about much. So apologies that all you'll get is a little bit of the dog at the end. And thank you for being here. Thanks for all your support. Like I say, I will be, when this uploads, I'll be going to answer messages on the, from previous vlogs and the podcast. And all things being equal, I'll see you again next week, which will also be, are we getting towards month end? Not yet. Oh, actually, yes, next weekend is the last weekend of the month. Better get cracking then. All right, my lovelies, thank you so much. Apologies that this was a very kind of one subject topic vlog this week, but that's how life has been. So we're all good, we're all fine. Yep, head still a little bit fried, but getting back to normal, whatever that means. Take care, everyone. Thank you for being here. Have a good week, and I'll see you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.